She called the cops and said I was trespassing on my own land. I was fixing the fence, and the first patrol car stopped in front of my driveway. Then another one. Lights flashing. Neighbors walking out with phones in their hands like it was a show. Karen stood across the street in her perfect white outfit, arms folded, chin high. That's him. Officer. He doesn't belong here. He's violating HOA code and refusing to leave. I wiped the sweat off my face and looked at the officer. Leave what? This property, she snapped before he could speak. He was never approved by the association. I laughed, not loud, just enough, because the funny part? There is no HOA on my side of the street, but she knew that. Or maybe she didn't. 3 weeks ago, I bought this house at a county auction. Small place, needed work. Quiet road just outside her precious gated neighborhood. The line between my land and her HOA was a thin strip of grass and one old oak tree. She hated that tree. The first day I moved in, she walked over holding a clipboard like she was running the whole state. You'll need to repaint that garage. Approved colors only. I'm not in your HOA. She smiled. Slow, fake. Everyone here is. I didn't argue then. I was busy unloading boxes. My son was carrying tools inside. We just wanted peace. 2 days later, a bright orange notice was taped to my door. Final warning. Vacate property. No signature. Just a bold HOA stamp. That's when I knew she wasn't just bossy. She was dangerous. Back to today. The officer stepped toward me. Sir, she claims you're illegally occupying property governed by Cedar Glen HOA. I'd love to see that map, I said calmly. Karen jumped in. He refuses to pay fees. He parks a truck in the driveway. He's lowering property values. My truck was a clean work pickup. Nothing special. The officer looked confused. Mom, do you have documentation showing this address is under your HOA? She pulled out papers fast. Too fast. Printed mats. Highlighted lines. A fake-looking stamp at the bottom. I didn't speak. I just watched. Because sometimes silence makes people expose themselves. The officer studied the paper. Sir, do you have proof of ownership? I nodded and walked inside. My son whispered, Dad, is she serious? Very, I said. When I came back, I handed over the county deed. Official seal, signed and recorded. The officer compared both documents. His forehead wrinkled. Ma'am, this map ends at the oak tree. Her smile faded for half a second, then came back stronger. That tree was moved. The boundary was updated last year. Moved. It's a 100-year-old oak. I looked at her carefully. You're saying I moved a tree the size of a house? Some neighbors laughed under their breath. Her face turned red. He's manipulating the officers. The second officer stepped forward. Ma'am, filing a false complaint is serious. She didn't back down. Fine. Then I'll sue him. I'll put a lien on his house. He won't last a month here. There it was. The real goal. She didn't want fees. She wanted control. The officers left after warning both of us to handle it civilly, but Karen stood at the edge of my driveway before walking away. This isn't over, she said quietly. You don't know who you're dealing with. I believed her. Because later that evening, I received an official-looking letter in my mailbox. Cedar Glen HOA had filed a lawsuit against me for noncompliance and unauthorized occupancy. Filed. Not threatened. Filed. 3 days after that, a tow truck showed up and tried to hook my pickup. No parking without HOA permit, the driver said. I stepped in front of the truck. You touched that vehicle, and you're stealing. He showed me paperwork, signed by Karen. Stamped. It looked real. That's when I made one call. Not to a lawyer. Not to the police. Just one quiet call. And 3 minutes later, everything changed. Because Karen had no idea who really owned the strip of land between our houses. And she definitely didn't know whose signature was sitting on the original boundary survey from 1987. Mine. She thought she was fighting a single dad fixing a fence. She didn't realize I was the one who designed the subdivision map she was waving around. And I never forget a line I draw. The tow truck driver was still sitting inside his cab when a black SUV rolled slowly down the street. Not fast. Not loud. Just calm. It stopped right behind the patrol car that Karen had called again because yes, she called them back when she saw the SUV. She stood there with that same tight smile. Good. More witnesses. The SUV door opened. A tall man stepped out in a county jacket. No sirens, no drama, just authority that didn't need to shout. Karen frowned. And who are you? He didn't answer her. He looked at me first. You still have the original copy? I nodded and handed him the old tube case I had pulled from my garage wall. The neighbors leaned closer. Karen's voice got sharp. This is harassment. He's trying to intimidate the HOA. The county officer ignored. Karen unrolled the large survey paper. On the hood of the patrol car, it was old. Yellowed edges, real signatures in blue ink. Stamped by the county engineering office. Dated 1987. He tapped the bottom right corner. See this seal? The patrol officer nodded. That's mine, he said. Karen blinked. That's impossible. He looked at her for the first time. Ma'am, I've been with the county for 38 years. I signed off on the original boundary lines for Cedar Glen. Her mouth opened, then closed. He traced a line with his finger. The HOA boundary ends at the oak tree. Always has. Always will. Karen's voice cracked slightly. The board updated it. You can't update county land lines with a board vote, he replied calmly. Silence. The tow truck driver slowly stepped out of his vehicle. So, no tow? The patrol officer shook his head. If you hook that truck, it's grand theft. The driver got back in and immediately started unhooking the chains. Karen's face was losing color, but she wasn't done. She forged documents, she suddenly said, pointing at me. He just admitted he made the map. The county officer smiled faintly. Yes, he drew the engineering draft. Under my supervision. He was part of the original planning team. Murmurs spread through the crowd. Someone whispered, wait, what? I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. Karen looked at me like she had never really seen me before. You're lying. The county officer folded the survey carefully. Ma'am, filing a false lawsuit using fabricated HOA authority is fraud. That word hit harder than anything else. Fraud. She tried one last move. I'll call the HOA attorney. He'll fix this. The patrol officer sighed. We already did. Her head snapped toward him. He reviewed your filing this morning, after we received the second complaint. He withdrew representation. The silence now wasn't funny. It was heavy. You're saying, her voice was smaller now, the lawsuit is void. The officer finished, and the county is opening an investigation into unauthorized lien threats and impersonation of regulatory authority. One of the neighbors actually gasped. Karen turned to them. Don't just stand there. He's ruining this community. An older man from across the street stepped forward. No, Karen, you've been doing that for years. That wasn't part of my plan. That was just truth finally breathing. Another neighbor spoke up. You fined my daughter for chalk drawings. And you charged us for a shadow violation because our flagpole was 2 inches off. The dam was breaking. Karen looked around like the ground itself had betrayed her. You're all ungrateful, she said weakly. The county officer handed paperwork to the patrol officer. Ma'am, we'll need you to come with us to answer some questions regarding falsified boundary adjustments. Her voice rose again. You can't arrest me over a mistake. The patrol officer replied calmly. It stopped being a mistake when you filed it in court. They didn't cuff her. They didn't need to. She walked to the patrol car stiffly, still trying to hold her pride together. Before she got in, she looked at me. This isn't over. I met her eyes. It was over 3 minutes ago. The patrol car door shut, and just like that, the street felt lighter. The black SUV stayed parked for a moment. The county officer walked over to me quietly. You knew she'd push it this far. I nodded. Control always pushes too far. He looked at the oak tree. Funny thing is, that strip of land she wanted so bad. I raised an eyebrow. He smiled slightly. It's not just outside her HOA. A pause. It's designated protected county greenbelt. I blinked. Meaning no HOA can ever touch it, and neither can she. Across the street, Karen's perfectly trimmed hedges sat half a foot over that invisible line, and for the first time, I saw the real twist forming. The patrol car disappeared at the end of the street, but nobody went back inside. They stayed, watching me, watching the oak tree, watching the invisible line that Karen had tried to erase. The county officer closed the back of his SUV and stood beside me. You might want to measure those hedges. I followed his eyes. Karen's perfect green wall, trimmed like it was cut with a ruler, crossed that greenbelt line by almost 6 inches. 6 inches doesn't sound like much, until it's protected county land. I exhaled slowly. She built that 2 years ago. He nodded. Without a permit. How do you know? Because I signed those too. That's when it clicked. Karen had been playing HOA queen for years. But she never expected the land itself to answer back. The neighbors started whispering louder now. She told us we couldn't plant tomatoes. She fined me for a basketball hoop. She charged late fees during Christmas. Every sentence was like a brick falling off her fake throne. My son stepped closer to me. Dad, is she going to jail? I don't know, I said honestly. But she's not in charge anymore. The county officer handed me a small folded paper. This is a notice of boundary violation. It's not for you. I looked at it. It had Karen's address typed neatly at the top. She encroached on protected land, he said calmly. And she submitted falsified survey updates last year. That's more than HOA drama. That's legal trouble. He paused. But here's the part she didn't understand. I waited. When she filed that lawsuit, she triggered a full property review. My chest tightened slightly. Meaning everything gets checked. Permits, additions, drainage, property taxes. Everything. Across the street, her house stood tall and perfect. Too perfect. The officer looked at it for a long moment. You might want to grab some popcorn. He drove off after that. The street stayed quiet, but not peaceful. Not anymore. That night, I sat on the porch with my son. The oak tree branches moved gently in the wind. Why does she hate us so much? He asked. She doesn't hate us, I said. She hates what she can't control. He thought about that. I'm glad you didn't yell, he said. I smiled. Power doesn't need to shout. He nodded like he understood something bigger than today. Across the street, Karen's house was dark. No lights, no movement. But around 10 p.m., headlights rolled in. Not police, not county, a white city inspection truck. I leaned forward slightly. Two inspectors stepped out with clipboards and flashlights. They didn't knock. They walked straight to the side of her house, measured something near the fence, then looked at each other. One of them took pictures. The other shook his head. The neighbors were watching again. By morning, yellow tags were posted on Karen's side gate. Unpermitted structure. I didn't need binoculars to see it. Her extended patio. The one she bragged about at every HOA meeting. The one she claimed increased community standards. Built 3 feet into protected drainage land. And it didn't stop there. By noon, another truck arrived. This time from the county tax office. That one made people step even closer. An older woman from down the street whispered. She said she paid everything early every year. The tax officer knocked on her door for a long time. No answer. He posted a sealed envelope. Final notice, property reassessment. I didn't smile. I didn't celebrate. I just watched the dominoes fall. Because when someone uses fake authority long enough, they start believing their own lies. And lies collapse loud. Around 3 p.m., Karen finally came home. Her car door slammed hard. She saw the yellow tags first, then the envelope, then the quiet faces watching from porches. She ripped the notice off her gate and stormed toward my driveway. I stayed seated. My son stood behind me. You did this, she shouted. No, I said calmly. You did. You called them. You called the police on me. Her jaw tightened. This is harassment. This is review. I corrected. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. You think you won? You embarrassed me. I looked at her evenly. You tried to take my home. Her voice cracked just a little. You weren't supposed to fight back. That sentence, that one sentence told the whole story. I stood up slowly. I didn't fight. I just showed the truth. She looked over at the oak tree like it betrayed her personally. You knew about the green belt. Yes, you waited. I hoped you'd stop. Her face changed then. Not anger, fear. Because she understood something now. She didn't lose because I attacked her. She lost because she pushed too far. A county truck rolled back onto the street at that exact moment. But this one wasn't inspections. It was enforcement. 2 uniformed officers stepped out with a demolition notice. Demolition. For her patio. It blocked drainage flow from the greenbelt. During heavy rain, it redirected water toward neighboring properties, including mine. Which meant she could have flooded my house, on purpose or by ego. Either way, it was real. She stared at the notice like it was written in another language. You can't tear it down, she whispered. The officer replied gently. Ma'am, it was never approved. She looked at me again, and for the first time, there was no threat left in her eyes, just panic. You set me up, she said. No, I replied quietly. You set your rules above the law. The demolition was scheduled for the next morning. The entire neighborhood knew. And they watched. Because for years, Karen made them watch when she fined them. Made them stand outside during inspections. Made them feel small. Now the roles were reversed. The next day, machines arrived. Not loud at first, just steady. Metal arms lifting concrete, breaking the patio she once showed off with wine glasses and HOA speeches. Karen stood at her window, didn't come outside, didn't yell, didn't fight, because she knew fighting only made it worse now. But here's the twist she never saw coming. When the drainage crew cleared the ground under her patio, they found something buried. Old survey markers. Original steel pins from 1987. One of them was bent. Not by time. By force. It had been moved. Recently, the county officer called me that afternoon. Did you ever adjust your boundary markers? No. He sighed. We have signs of tampering. My stomach dropped slightly. Meaning someone tried to shift the greenbelt line toward my house. I didn't need to ask who. But the real shock wasn't that she moved it. It was when the officer added, she didn't move it enough. I frowned. What? She pushed it too far. Too far. As in, she accidentally shifted the marker in a way that placed part of her own driveway onto protected land. I stepped outside slowly and looked across the street. Her smooth concrete driveway, perfectly aligned. Except now, it wasn't. County paint marks appeared that evening. Red lines across the edge of her driveway. Neighbors gasped openly this time. Because if those marks were accurate, she would lose half her parking space, and maybe more. That night, Karen knocked on my door. Not storming, not yelling, knocking. I opened it. She didn't step inside, didn't smile, just stood there looking smaller than before. You knew about the markers. I knew about the land. I said, please, she said quietly, talk to them. I studied her face. For years she talked down to people, threatened, humiliated. Now her voice trembled. They'll tear up my driveway, she whispered. You tried to tow my truck, I reminded her. Tears filled her eyes, but she held them back. I was protecting standards. You were protecting control. Silence stretched between us. Then she said something I didn't expect. I didn't think you mattered. I didn't respond right away. Because that was the real problem. Not fees. Not paint colors. Not hedges. She thought some people just didn't matter. I stepped slightly to the side so she could see my son inside. You called the cops on my kid. Her shoulders dropped. I was wrong. That was the first honest thing she said. But honesty doesn't erase paperwork. The next morning, the county finalized their findings. Boundary tampering, unauthorized construction, false legal filing, and attempted enforcement beyond jurisdiction. They didn't arrest her again. They did something worse. They dissolved her authority. Effective immediately, Karen was removed as HOA president pending full board review. But here's the part that shocked everyone. The board members. They were being audited too. Because when she filed that lawsuit, she used HOA funds. They didn't arrest her again. They did something worse. They dissolved her authority. Effective immediately, Karen was removed as HOA president pending full board review. But here's the part that shocked everyone. The board members. They were being audited too. Because when she filed that lawsuit, she used HOA funds. For a few weeks, things stayed quiet. No warning letters. No fake notices. No patrol cars rolling in because someone violated community standards. The HOA board called an emergency vote. Karen didn't show up. She sent a written statement blaming miscommunication and administrative errors. But this time, nobody clapped. Nobody defended her. And when the votes were counted, she wasn't just removed as president, she was removed from the board completely. The audit results came out 2 weeks later. HOA funds have been used to hire a private attorney for the lawsuit against me, without board approval, without majority vote, without disclosure. That alone was enough to trigger a civil case against her. That the bigger problem, the falsified boundary update she submitted last year. She had sent altered survey lines to the HOA management company, claiming the county-approved expansion of their jurisdiction. The management company believed her because she attached a scanned county seal, the same seal she copied from an old public record that crossed a line bigger than hedges and driveways. Forgery. The county didn't rush it. They moved slow, careful, thorough, because when government steps in for real, it doesn't shout. It documents. Karen hired a lawyer after that, a real one. He came to my house one afternoon, professional, calm, suit pressed clean. He didn't threaten. He asked, "Are you willing to settle and avoid further escalation?" I leaned against my porch railing. Settle what? She's willing to withdraw all claims and issue a written apology. She already withdrew them. He adjusted his glasses. She would like your written statement confirming no damages. There it was. She was trying to limit exposure, because if I filed a countersuit for wrongful, lien threat and attempted unlawful towing, it wouldn't be small, and she knew it. I didn't answer right away. My son was inside doing homework, peacefully. That was worth more than revenge. I don't want money, I said finally. The lawyer looked surprised. Then what do you want? I looked across the street at her house. Her hedges trimmed shorter now, driveway cut clean at the red line, patio gone. I want her to attend the next HOA meeting, I said, and say publicly that she had no authority over my property, that she filed false action, and that no homeowner should ever be threatened again. The lawyer studied me. That's all. That's all. He nodded slowly. I'll relay that. The meeting happened on a Thursday night. Full room. Neighbors standing against walls. Phones recording. Karen walked in last. Not in white. Not smiling. Just quiet. She stood at the front when her name was called. For a moment, I thought she might try one last excuse. One last twist. But she didn't. Her voice wasn't loud. I acted outside the scope of my authority. I filed action against a property not governed by this HOA. That was wrong. Silence. I apologize. That was it. No dramatic speech. No tears. Just truth. And sometimes truth is heavier than yelling. The board voted to implement a new rule that night. No legal action can be filed by the HOA without full board vote and third-party legal verification of jurisdiction. Translation: no more fake power. When we walked home, my son looked up at me. You could have crushed her. I shook my head. Justice isn't crushing someone. It's stopping them. A month later, Karen's house went up for sale. Quietly. No goodbye party. No farewell speech. Just a sign on the lawn. People asked if I forced her out. I didn't. Tower lost its grip. And without control, she didn't know how to live there anymore. On the day the moving truck came, she saw me outside. She hesitated, then walked over. I never thought someone would stand up to me, she said. You weren't used to being questioned, I replied. She nodded once, then said something I didn't expect. You didn't humiliate me. You tried to humiliate me first. I know. There wasn't hate in her eyes anymore, just regret. She got in her car and left without another word. The oak tree stood between the properties like it always had, unmoved, unbothered. Weeks passed. New neighbors moved into her old house. Young couple, friendly. They brought cookies the first night. They asked about the tree. I smiled. It marks the line, I said. What line? They asked. The one you don't cross. They laughed, not knowing how real that was. One evening, as the sun dropped low and the sky turned orange, my son sat beside me again. Dad, why didn't you tell everyone from the start that you helped design the subdivision? I looked at the street, kids riding bikes, neighbors talking freely, because now they felt safe. Sometimes, I said slowly, people show you who they are when they think you're weak. He thought about that, and it's better to let them. He leaned back in his chair. You know what I learned? What? Just because someone shouts rules doesn't mean they own the land. I smiled. That's a line worth remembering. He grinned. Viral line. I laughed softly. Maybe. The truth is, I didn't fight for that house just because it was property. I fought because no one gets to tell my family we don't belong. Not with fake stamps. Not with loud voices. Not with borrowed authority. 3 minutes. That's all it took. 3 minutes to unfold a map. 3 minutes to expose a lie. 3 minutes to remind everyone that law is stronger than ego. And here's the part people don't see. Power isn't loud. It's prepared. Karen thought she was suing a man who didn't belong. She thought she was pushing out someone quiet. She didn't know the quiet man helped draw the very line she tried to erase. In the end, nobody clapped. No music played. No dramatic speeches. Just peace. And sometimes, peace is the loudest victory of all.